Hey folks, this is Kalani. Season 4 of Dragonflight is here, and with it comes some very interesting new ways to gear up. We have some huge dungeon changes, which makes them more valuable than previous seasons, awakened raids and activities with much higher item level rewards, and new gear vendors so you can buy exactly what you want without having to rely on RNG and random drops. But with so many options, it can be quite difficult to keep everything straight, so we're going to go through how gear works in Season 4, how you can upgrade items to be even more powerful, how far each type of content will take you, and which sources of gear are the easiest sources of high item level gear. So here's our Season 4 Ultimate Gearing Guide and how you can get to item level 520 and beyond. Now before we jump in, be sure to hit up that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. To start with, let's quickly go over the upgrade system in Season 4. There are a lot of folks returning to the game for this season, and the whole Flightstones, Crests and upgrade level thing can be quite overwhelming if you're coming back after a long break. There are three parts to the upgrade system: the gear you can get and upgrade, the Flightstone currency, and a variety of crests that we need to collect. Almost every piece of gear that drops in Season 4 at endgame will have a tag and an upgrade level. For example, this piece of gear came from doing open world content, it's item level 480, it has the veteran tag, and its upgrade level is 1 of 8. That means that we can upgrade this item 7 times for a max upgrade level of 8 of 8, increasing its item level as we go. Now, different upgrade tracks and tags actually overlap. I'll pop a chart up on screen to better illustrate this. There are Explorer, Adventurer, Veteran, Champion, Hero and Myth gear tracks, and for Season 4, Explorer gear goes from 454 to 476, but Adventurer starts halfway through that at item level 467. It's set up like this to ensure that whenever you get a piece of gear, the lowest upgrade level it can drop at would be 4 of 8, meaning you will always have 4 upgrades available to any gear you get. It wouldn't be super great getting a 7 of 8 item with only 1 upgrade available, so that would instead be a 3 of 8 piece on the next gear track, giving you much more upgrade potential. When you get to the Hero track and Myth track, gear works a bit differently, simply because that is the highest levels of gear available, so they only have 6 and 4 upgrades respectively. Now there is a new special track for Season 4 called Awakened, which only comes from the Bronze Bullion vendors, but this gear starts at item level 493 and can be upgraded 12 times. The very rare Awakened gear can be upgraded 14 times for a max item level of 535, so these kinda break the typical gear upgrade rules, which end up making Bullion gear extremely valuable. We'll talk more about this in a moment. This does mean that most of your gear will have limits on how far it can be upgraded, so eventually you will have to take part in higher difficulty content types to increase your item level or get more awakened gear from the Bullion vendors. To upgrade your gear, you need to visit an upgrade NPC. My favourite ones are the upgrade vendor in the PvP room in Valdrakken, or the one in the old Storm Sigil vendor building. If you plug in a piece of gear, you can see what you would need to upgrade it. You can also see how far you can upgrade it and what the item level of the results will be. So to complete these upgrades, we need the Flightstone currency as well as some crests. Flightstones are quite straightforward. Pretty much every endgame activity will reward you with some Flightstones, so whether you're doing weekly quests, outdoor world content, dungeons, raids or even PvP, you'll be earning Flightstones. You can only hold 2,000 at a time, so if you're getting close to that 2,000 limit, it might be worth looking at which items you can upgrade. Crests are a little bit more complicated. There are 4 types of crests: Whelpling Awakened Crests, Drake Awakened Crests, Worm Awakened Crests, and Aspect Awakened Crests. Doing higher tiers of content will reward you with higher tiers of crests, and the higher the item level of your gear, the higher crests you will need to fuel and fund your upgrades. All of your crests are tracked under your currency tab, and they also have a weekly limit. You can only collect 120 per week, but that cap is cumulative, so our max or seasonal limit will increase by 120 per week, so you can always catch up later in the season. Whelpling crests are going to come from outdoor world content, raid finder awakened raid bosses and heroic dungeons. Drake crests come from weekly events and quests, normal awakened raid bosses and mythic 0 dungeons. Worm crests are going to come from awakened raid bosses on heroic mode or doing mythic +2 to 5 keys. And then aspect crests are going to come from killing bosses in awakened raids on mythic difficulty or doing mythic +6 keys or above. You can also buy Drake Crests and Worm Crests from the weekly vault vendor if you decide to take tokens of merit instead of the piece of gear for the week, which can be a very important source if you don't do much group content. The entire upgrade system also has catch-up mechanics for Flightstones and Crest costs. It will keep track of the highest item level piece of gear you have for each slot, and if you try to upgrade an item that is below that higher item level, you won't have to spend any crests to upgrade that piece of gear, and your Flightstone cost will also be reduced. So if you get a side grade, but it's a few upgrade stages below your current gear, you can upgrade it quite cheaply and easily. This is especially good for trinkets, where the item level doesn't always line up with the power level of the trinket itself. The Flightstone cost reduction also carries over for your alts, so you won't need quite as many Flightstones to upgrade the gear on your alts, making it much easier to keep up with multiple characters. That's pretty much everything about the upgrade system covered. If you have any lingering questions, pop them in the comments below and I'll do my best to clear things up. With all of that squared away, let's check out some of the gearing options we have in Season 4 of Dragonflight. Let's start with the gearing options that are available to everyone. One of the most important things to do would be to pick up the Last Hurrah weekly quest in Valdrakken. This rewards you with a box of goodies which includes upgrade materials as well as item level 493 gear, so that is a great start to your gearing adventures. The weekly quest also points you towards other world content which can help you gear up further. Pretty much every world event will drop some good rewards while it is awakened. Most of them are rewarding item level 480 gear on the veteran track. The events are split into 3 groups that follow the Last Hurrah quest, so we have the Dragon Isles, the Zaralek Caverns, and then Amirdrasil. For the Dragon Isles, there's the Siege of Dragonbane Keep in the Waking Shores, the Community Feast over in Iskara in the Azure Span, and then you can find the Grand Hunt by following the horn icon on the Dragon Isles map. For the Zaralek Cavern, we have the Researchers Under Fire event, which is in the Zaralek Cavern itself, and then the Farak Assaults, which can be found on the Dragon Isles world map. And then during the Amirdrasil week, it's going to be things like the Super Bloom and the Seed Planting events, which are in the Emerald Dream Zone. The Awakened World content will depend on the current Awakened rotation. The weekly Last Hurrah quest points you towards the content that is awakened for that week, so that's an easy way to keep track of it. If you do the content required for the weekly quest, you should see these higher item level rewards as well. You can also just check the icons on the world map. If it says Awakened in blue text on the tooltip, you'll be getting those better rewards. If it doesn't say Awakened, you'll need to wait until the right week for that content to become worthwhile for Season 4 gearing. The world bosses tied to the Awakened rotation will also drop much higher item level gear. They can drop item level 499 gear, which is pretty huge, so be sure you're killing the world bosses each week as well. All of this content also seems to reward you with a Cache of Storms, which can open for Drake Crests and even more veteran track gear. Be careful with these caches though, they are marked as unique, meaning you cannot get another one while you have one in your bags. So I would encourage you to open these as soon as you get them, just to make sure you don't lose out on your next cache. That's pretty much everything for the Outdoor World content portion, but another very powerful gearing option available to everyone is crafted gear. You can get up to item level 525 gear using the new Season 4 crafting spark, the Spark of Awakening. To get a Spark of Awakening, you're going to need to gather 2 splintered Sparks of Awakening and combine them together with some Flightstones. That's the only way to get your spark for crafting. There are 2 sources of splinters that we know of so far. Your first splinter comes from the various weekly quests that have Awakened weekly activity in their reward list. So you can do the Last Hurrah weekly quest by the Fountain in Valdrakken, or either of the 2 weekly PvP quests in the PvP building. The first one you complete will give you 1 splintered spark per week. The other splinter comes from endgame group content. You need to either complete Mythic Plus dungeons or kill Awakened raid bosses. LFR bosses do count, so that's the easiest way to get your hands on that second splinter. This second splinter will only be available once though, unless you miss a weekly quest. So in this first week you can get 2 splinters, but from here on out, if you keep up with the weekly quests, you will only be able to get 1 splinter per week, which then gives us 1 extra spark every 2 weeks. So gather those splinters, smash them together, and you'll have a Spark of Awakening. You can then use that spark in a high-level crafting recipe to create item level 502 gear. If you have the crafting profession for the piece of gear you want, easy peasy, just gather the materials, slot the spark in, and craft away. If you don't have the profession, you're going to need to visit the crafting order clerks in Valdrakken, collect all of the materials and your spark, find the recipe in the crafting order window, remember to set a minimum rank if you're sending a guild or personal order, and hope there's someone available to craft it. You can get up to item level 502 gear using just the spark if you get rank 5 items crafted, so you can get yourself a new piece of 502 gear every time we get a new spark, which should be every other week past this point. You can also upgrade your crafted gear using enchanted awakened crests, which can take your crafted gear all the way to item level 525. The enchanted worm crest can increase the item level up to 515, while the enchanted aspect crest can take it up to that 525 cap. The nascent crests required for these crafts come from enchanting suppliers and just cost you worm crests or aspect crests depending on which one you're looking to craft. Using the enchanted crest is super simple. You either add it in with your initial spark crafting order, or you can bring your piece of gear back to the crafting order clerk, order a recraft, slot your gear in and attach the enchanted crest then. You can also add embellishments to your crafted gear to give them an extra boost. You can have up to 2 embellishment items equipped at a time, but it's worth noting that you can equip as many pieces of crafted gear as you want, just as long as they are not embellished. You can also pick the stats for your crafted gear using a missive, which means you can always pick your very best stats when crafting this higher item level gear, making it a very valuable option. Moving on, Season 4 also increases the item level of rewards you can get from raids, but only while they are awakened, so be sure you check which raid is awakened before you start your adventures for the week. If you open the raid journal, you can see the currently awakened raid has this special icon, so that's a super easy way to check. For looking for raid, gear starts dropping at item level 480, with the end bosses dropping item level 489 gear. On normal mode, we start out at item level 493, with the last boss dropping item level 502 loot. On heroic mode, we move up to item level 506 at the start, with 515 from the last boss, and then on mythic mode, we're looking at item level 519 from the early bosses, and item level 528 from the later ones. The raid is also the only place you can get tier set tokens reliably, as they drop throughout each raid. The last boss also drops a new Omni token, the Awakened Tempo Stone, which you can trade in for a tier set piece of your choice at the difficulty you killed the boss on. This is also going to be super useful for filling in gaps with your set bonuses, and gives raiders a pretty big advantage when it comes to securing that 4 set bonus as quickly as possible. Killing raid bosses is also going to fill up your weekly vault. For Season 4 you'll need 2 kills, 4 kills and 6 kills to unlock the first, second and third option respectively. The vault will give you a random piece of gear from the highest difficulty you killed the bosses on, so it's a great chance to get some extra big upgrades. But perhaps the most important reward from raids are the antique bronze bullions. These can drop from any raid boss, including LFR bosses, so that's the easiest way to get your hands on them. You can get 1 per week and the cap is cumulative, so if you don't get your bullion in the first week, you will be able to pick up 2 in the second week. So our maximum increases by 1 for every week that goes by. Raid bosses are the only way to get bullions from what we know so far, so raid bosses are probably the most valuable source of gear in the entire season. You can spend these bullions at new vendors in Valdrakken. There are 3 vendors, 1 for each Dragonflight raid, and they sell every weapon, ring, trinket, or very rare item from that raid. So you can buy some very powerful pieces of gear by using your bullions. Each piece of gear will cost 2 bullions, so 2 weeks of earnings. This gear also has the special Awakened Gear track that we talked about earlier, meaning it can be upgraded much further than regular gear, up to the highest item levels available in the current season. So it's some of the best gear you can get, and you can buy exactly what you want. Bullions are probably the single best gearing opportunity you have in the season, so I would encourage you to at least kill LFR bosses until you get your bullion each week. Moving on to dungeons. A lot has changed in Season 4. The big dungeon overhaul makes heroic dungeons and Mythic 0 dungeons more difficult, but also a lot more rewarding, giving you more options for obtaining higher item level gear without needing to worry about the timers or affixes of the Mythic Plus system. To start with, normal dungeons haven't changed that much. You can queue into them and the bosses drop item level 460 gear, so that's a good start, but nothing too crazy. Heroic dungeons were made more difficult, but more rewarding at the same time. You can still queue into them, and they are very easy despite the difficulty bump. Heroic dungeon bosses drop item level 476 gear, making them an amazing source of gear to get the ball rolling. Mythic 0 dungeons saw a big jump in difficulty and rewards as well, so they are far more valuable when compared to previous seasons, and they actually offer you an endgame progression path in dungeons that don't have timers or affixes or the pressure that goes along with the Mythic Plus Keystone system. So in Season 4 you can get item level 493 just from running Mythic 0 dungeons, which is pretty huge. And then Mythic Plus scales up from there as per usual, up to a maximum reward of 509 item level gear from +9 keys or above. So if you want to challenge yourself and work through the higher difficulty Mythic Plus keystone system, you can earn progressively better and better gear, and you're also going to start earning those higher tiers of crests to upgrade your gear as well. Doing any dungeons starting with heroic difficulty will also contribute to your weekly vault. The higher you go in difficulty, the better rewards you will get, starting down at item level 489 for heroic dungeons and scaling all the way up to item level 522 for Mythic Plus 10 keys. So there's a lot of potential gear progression in dungeons, and you can get some of the highest available rewards from the weekly vault. And then last but not least, we come to PvP. PvP gear is very different from other sources because it has a PvE item level as well as a PvP item level, and all this does is ensure that your PvP gear is more powerful while in PvP combat, so if you want to PvP, you should be trying to get PvP gear. You can get 470 item level adventurer gear from the War Mode Quartermaster, and that will cost you bloody tokens. These can be farmed by completing PvP world quests or by killing players with War Mode turned on. There's a higher tier of this gear which is available at item level 489, but they cost Trophies of Strife and more bloody tokens. The Trophies of Strife come from a weekly PvP quest in the same PvP building that asks you to collect Sparks of Life by completing various activities with War Mode on, so if you decide to go down this route, be prepared to do some PvP out in the open world. You can also buy trophies from Militia for 3500 honor a pop, so they are very expensive, and it's only if you fall behind the current weekly cap. Then you have Honor gear at item level 454, all you need is the Honor currency, which can be obtained from any PvP activity. The next tier up is Conquest gear from the Conquest vendor. This gear starts at item level 493, and you can earn Conquest in rated PvP or from various first win rewards. And always remember to check the PvP item level of any gear you're collecting or upgrading, because that's the actual important part while you're taking part in PvP activities. Earning honor in rated PvP content will also fill up your PvP weekly vault row, giving you another option to get some big upgrades every week on reset day. Another important aspect to know about the Great Vault is that even if you don't get any gear upgrades when you open your vault, you have the option to take a currency instead. You can get up to 6 tokens per week if you have 3 or more vault options available. You can spend these tokens at the vendor right next to the vault. You can pick up some gold, Flightstones, Drake Crests, Worm Crests, or an item to add sockets to your Season 4 gear, so you can always get something useful from the vault even if it's not a piece of gear. And then the last thing you need to know about gearing up and powering up your character is the Revival Catalyst. The Catalyst allows you to turn pieces of Season 4 gear into tier set gear, giving you access to your 2 set and 4 set bonuses without having to get the actual pieces of tier gear from the raid or other sources. To use the Catalyst, you'll need 2 things, a piece of seasonal gear and a charge. The charges are super simple, we get 1 charge per week every week. That's it, so you have 1 charge to spend every week and you can hold up to 9. Your characters all get their own charges too, so if you start gearing up an alt a few weeks later, they will have quite a few charges to use right away, which is always nice. The piece of gear is a bit more complicated because not everything works in the Catalyst. Any gear you get from Mythic Dungeons, raids or PvP should work by default, so no worries there, but a lot of open world content rewards do not currently count for the Catalyst. An easy way to check is to just pop by the Catalyst and see if it will let you use the item. You can see that almost all of my world content gear is greyed out, so I can't use that to get tier gear. With the Awakened rotation, it's also going to be a bit awkward keeping track of what works and which open world content is worth doing at which time, but eventually everything will be awakened, which will make that part much easier to keep track of. And then if you are planning on doing any endgame content in Season 4, there is an important achievement you should know about. The Dragonflight Season 4 Master achievement rewards you with the Awakened Mark of Mastery, which you can then trade in for a piece of heroic item level tier gear in the same building as the Bullion gear vendors. This is perfect for finishing up your tier set bonus, so I would recommend you hold onto this token to get the last piece you need for your 4 set bonus. To complete the achievement and earn your mark, you'll need to clear any of the Awakened raids on Heroic mode, get to 2000 Mythic Plus rating, or reach Challenger 2 in rated PvP. But that should cover everything you could ever want to know about gearing up in Season 4 of Dragonflight, so that's it for our Season 4 Ultimate Gearing Guide. How are you going to gear up this season? Will you be jumping into dungeons with the big overhaul in place, checking out the Awakened raids, or maybe just chilling until some other content comes our way? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and all of our members here on YouTube. You can see the names floating by on screen. If you'd like to add your name to the end of every video with a special shout out at the start of the next video, you can find links in the description over to Patreon or click the join button just below this video. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.